So the ELC, several members of the ELC presented last month at the Texas Distance Learning Association. And we decided when we got back that it would be great if we presented what we did there here at Collin, so that you guys know that know what it is that we were sort of bringing to the forefront at the conference with TXDLA. So myself and Andrew Campbell, who is the co-presenter with me today, presented at TXDLA on gamification, and specifically kind of what it takes to make gamification happen in a course. Gamification has sort of become a buzzword that's tossed around quite a bit, and particularly in online courses. How do we gamify and make them hopefully more engaging and more interesting for our students? But what does it take? How do we do that? A lot of that depends on what level of gamification that you're looking for. But to start off with, really the first question that we have to ask is what is it? What is gamification? Now I know that we don't have quite as many people that had signed up in here as of yet, so normally we ask that you type any questions that you have into the chat box, but if anybody wants to unmute yourself and just throw a question out there, feel free to do that. So anybody got an idea of what gamification is? What does it mean? Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? So if you click on Manage Participants and unmute yourself, you can do that, or type it into the chat box. Lishan says interactive. Absolutely. That what gamification creates interactivity. But what makes a learning activity gamified? I got no takers. All right.
It could be to develop a some kind of module for them to use on their phone, read a game.
Absolutely.
Use
Absolutely.
on their phone that relates to the terms and concepts within, for example, for me, it would be within economics.
Right.
So it would look in the halls. A lot of the students are using their phones, so it's a way
Absolutely.
to meet them halfway and design our curriculum.
Absolutely. But what makes that, whether it's presented through the phone or presented through a computer or anything, that makes it gamified, and here we have it up on the screen, gamification defined. And this is a very simple definition straight out of dictionary.com. The process of adding games or game-like elements to something such as a task so as to encourage participation. Well, that's very, very vague, but it does get straight to the point. They go on to say the basic concept of gamification isn't new, and it refers to the incorporation of game elements like point and reward systems to tasks as incentives for people to participate. And this next part I really love. In other words, gamification is about making something potentially tedious into a game. Gamification is effective because it taps into people's natural desires for competition and achievement. So taking something potentially tedious and turning it into a game that might add a level of enjoyment and interactivity for the student. So going back up here a little bit, it refers to the incorporation of game elements, and it gives one example, point and reward system, systems, but there's also things like badges. A game always has rules. So if your learning activity has specific rules, that is a game element. For me, one of the ones that I think is super important, but oftentimes kind of gets left out, is the idea that a game has a win state. You either win it or you don't win it. I don't like to say lose, but either you win or you don't win. So if you have a win state, then that to me is a very clear indication that this learning activity is a game and therefore is gamified. Any thoughts or comments on that that concept of what gamification is?
Yeah, on the gamification, what you just said, yeah, as far as the winning portion, the positive reinforcement, I think ends up making the biggest difference.
Absolutely.
And absorbing the information. Like you say, I like to use Duolingo, for example. It's changed now, but like the earlier versions, it was always it was never lost. It was just a re-review of the things you were weaker on. And there was always a winning point, and then you just get next level for another winning point.
Perfect example of an aspect of a learning activity that's gamified, and it goes back to that idea of points or reward systems. What kind of reward is achieved, and that reward can be as simple as a positive reinforcement, but positive reinforcement is absolutely key to the retention of what it is that you're trying to get across to your students. So we're going to take about 5, maybe 6, 7, 8 minutes, and we're actually going to play a game. This link, I'm going to put it right here. Actually, I'm going to have to go into edit mode and copy it. And I'm going to paste it into the chat window so you can easily access it. So if you go to that link, you're going to find, first you'll find this, this sign-in page. If you want to put your information in there, that's fine. You can just skip past it, click continue to skip past it. But what you're going to find once you continue is a game that I created with one of the faculty from the surgical assisting program here at Collin. And this is what I would call about a mid-range game. It has a branching narrative, meaning that the player comes in and makes choices, and the choices that they make send them down different possible paths. It has a win state. It absolutely also has a lose state. Surgical assisting is one of those areas of study where you're dealing with people's lives. So it was very important to the faculty that the students knew that if they got it wrong, they were in trouble. So jump on in there and play the game. Take 5 minutes and go through that game. If you have any commentary, feel free to unmute yourself or type it into the chat box, and we'll go from there. If you just joined us, we are playing a game that I created, and the link to that game is in the chat box. We are playing a game. The link to the game is in the chat box.
Can you tell me again what application you used for the game?
The application is Articulate 360, and I'll talk about that in just a minute.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You bet. Has anybody won yet?
And if so, if you could type how long it took you into the chat box.
Or if you got to the lose point yet, either way. There is a pause button down in the lower left on most screens. And so if you find that information is going by a little too fast, that you can pause whatever slide you're on. And if it does go past the slide, most slides allow you to go back unless you are having answered a question. After you answer a question, you are stuck with the path that you chose. And is, because it says plain OELC, are you the one playing the game that did not win?
Nope, that was Clay.
Clay did not win.
I missed those on purpose, though. Just
Oh, okay. Of
was
course you did.
What a sport.
Brad, what we were remarking about here is that we like how the expressions of the characters change based on the answers we give.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Thomas, hit those books, man. We're dealing with people's lives here.
Yeah, no, I shouldn't be a nurse.
The first time I played, I got all the questions right. I think I took my grandmother to for surgeries too many times. So I didn't know if I should change careers and go for surgical assistant.
Good point, Thomas. All right. So it looks like everybody has pretty much made it through the game. So any thoughts or comments on the game itself? Feel free to unmute yourself and just speak it if you don't want to type it in. Did you find it?
I think it's a great start to give the professors opportunities to sort of create their own games, especially if we end up doing something like, instead of a multiple choice, a choose your own adventure, and that gives you the opportunity to branch off from multiple choice, whereas you can't, do on paper.
Yeah, and from a pedagogical standpoint, the more that we can require the students to have to think and make a choice that is not so easily available, and this one is designed around multiple choices within. But there are other ways to do it where their response needs to be in a different form, that the possible answer is not so readily available to them, and that may be more sound than just the straight multiple choice approach.
And also, it's nice because it will give students an opportunity to select multiple correct answers.
Yeah.
Certain situations, there's going to be more than just A, B, C, D.
Yeah, and you'll find in this particular game.
This is a good example of how it slows the learner down in a good way as compared to a lecture and then a quiz, or a PowerPoint and then a quiz, to incorporate the information and checking for understanding as they're going forward. Helps them take this down to a deeper level of processing faster.
Creating those synaptic connections with the information. Absolutely.
Yes, I will say that whenever it was switching screens, I found that it would it would switch screens, it would do an end dialogue, and then it would start dialogue. And before the end of that dialogue, I would be presented with a multiple choice selection, but there would be no question at the time. And as habit, I do find myself, if I'm ever on a test, I'll look back at the question, back at the answers.
Just out of curiosity, Casey, were you using the forward button to advance?
No, I was kind of letting it play on its own as a slideshow. If it did jump ahead, I did hit the back button, not
Okay.
back in the browser, but on the lower right-hand side.
Yeah.
I just wanted to point out real quick, Mindy had a great question about how long the game took to create, and the characters, are they stock, are they in the game software? I just wanted to allow.
That's
Excellent. Excellent questions. And I'm going to get to the how long did the game take to create here in a second, but I do want to show you here the what this thing looks like in Articulate, and specifically this part of the Articulate suite is called Storyline 360, and this is the software that we use here in the ELC to build some of this stuff. And as you can see, I have an opening, I have an optimum path, and then I have a recovery path, which is sort of in the middle if you get something wrong, and then a fail path. And in this particular game, the player is allowed to get 2 things wrong before they lose. So that's what this recovery path is designed for. Now to just jump right in to 360. Oh, and yes, Mindy, everything that I used in here, almost everything that I used in here, certainly the characters are stock characters. They come with the program. They have all different kinds of poses and clothes that they can wear and all kinds of stuff like that. So they give you go ahead.
Can you import images?
Can you import images? Absolutely. Yes. You can import any kind of images. You can import videos. You can import audio. You can do all kinds of stuff with this software. It's really cool. Before I jump off of the software, I do want to say that we have the software in the ELC. It's not a particularly inexpensive software. If anybody is interested in diving into Articulate and trying to figure out how it works, you can do a 30-day free trial and sort of get in there and play with it. Just Google Articulate and it should come up.
Does the free trial have all the different things, or is it a limited edition?
No, it is a full version of the software. You just get 30 days.
Okay.
And then you either have to pay for it or lose access. The one cool thing about, one of the cool things about Articulate is it's not a, it's a sign-on based, it's a subscription based. So you can install the applications on multiple computers. All you have to do is sign on to use it. So you have to have the subscription to be able to use it, but they don't limit the number of computers that you can put it on or anything like that, which is pretty cool. All right, so did somebody have a question?
Oh, and I was just going to say, I would like to see eventually in the future where we have a variety of game templates and our own image asset library along with our own iconography, things like that, that we can choose from, and it's customized for Colin.
Absolutely.
Ideally, I would love to see it go that direction.
Yeah, I've long had a desire to build a gaming system that has, for instance, multiple scenarios, like a first-person shooter scenario, a Jeopardy scenario, a choose-your-own-adventure scenario, and the SME or the faculty expert would come in and simply plug in their questions and answers, information, whatever they need to, into that pre-built template, and it would really speed up. That's a long-term development. I mean, literally, that would be a year or two to develop, but I think it would be a great idea as well. Okay, So I'm going to go back to the presentation, and we're going to go to the how was it made. This is, so that gameplay took you about maybe 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, right? So 3 to 5 minutes of gameplay. This is what it took for 3 to 5 minutes of gameplay. And as somebody who came from the content production world, I always divide things into pre-production, production, and post-production. So the pre-production here took 8 to 10 hours. It included the initial contact between me and the faculty, the needs assessment that we always do under these circumstances with the faculty to make sure that we're doing exactly what is best for what they're looking for. Then the SME, subject matter expert, which is the faculty or who is the faculty, has some homework to do. We're going to talk about the story and the paths and how it all works, but the SME has to write it. I don't know anything about surgical assisting. I mean, I know a lot more now than I did before we started this, but the SME has to do homework. And then we do a process called storyboarding, and I'll show you what that looks like. I use a free online service called Glyphy that kind of lets you build these modules and type text into them. And you can see here, this is what the game looks like in a storyboard format. Some storyboards are also going to include imagery. I didn't add it for this one, but you can see that it tells you which direction you go depending on which answer you choose, and the back and forth between the optimum path, and the recovery path and the fail path over here on the left-hand side. So it's pretty involved. There's a lot going on here. So that's where that 8 to 10 hours comes in on just the pre-production, and then the production is another 8 to 10 hours. The content building, which is my job or one of the instructional technologists' job here, we use to articulate Storyline 360. And then after it's built, we bring the client in and we take a look at it and go through the process of, yeah, that works, that doesn't work, let's change this, and so forth. That's another 8 to 10 hours. And then the post-production, which is about 4 hours, is the content testing and debugging. There's always mistakes that are made. The way that the system works in Articulate 360 is that, let me bring that up real quick. Over here on the right-hand side, you see triggers. So when you come down to some of these other slides, you'll see things like add 1 to fail number when the timeline starts. And in the, oh, not that one. Where's the one I'm looking for? And then you start checking to see whether or not the fail number is equal to or less than 1. And that tells the system that if it's equal to or less than 1, then the player can get back onto the optimum path. If it's equal to, or if it's above 1, 2 or more, it's never going to be more than 2, but 2, then the player is sent down to the fail path. So these are triggers and conditions and variables, and that is what creates the movement for the player through the game. Well, anytime you have something like that, you're going to get some things wrong. And so there's got to be testing and debugging before you can publish it. Then we have the final client approval, and then the implementation into the learning management system. So all of that together for this 3 to 5 minutes is a 20 to 24 hour time frame in order to get it built. So if you want a 20-minute game, then you're looking at maybe 60 to 80 hours of time to get it built. Which is why if we're talking about building templates or that sort of thing that have as much flexibility as possible, then you're talking about some serious time dedicated to that. Any questions on all of that? So the
So sorry, Brad. Minnie wants to know how large and what type of file.
So
is the
when it's published in what's called SCORM, SCORM, and SCORM is a standard for publishing dynamic interactive content that all LMSs, Blackboard, Canvas, Moodle, are able to import into their course. And so the type of file that is published, you actually determine that, through the publishing process. It can save in multiple different formats. If you're exporting it to live in your own web page that you built, then you would export it in a certain format. If you're importing it into a LMS like we would here at Collin, then it would go into the SCORM format. And those are the types of things that you learn as you're learning how to use the software itself.
So do you save it as both, or do you have to make a choice between the two?
You can always export it as any different type of thing, because it's always going to live as a story, Articulate Storyline 360 file. What makes it accessible to other people is the process of publishing it to whatever medium that you want to publish it into, so that others can access it. Good question. Thank you. So then the big burning question, can I do that? Can you do this? And of course, the first thing you got to ask yourself is, do you have the technical skills to build your own content? Do you know the software? If you don't, are you willing to learn? Do you want to learn how to use the software? In that case, then there is the 30-day trial with Articulate 360. And then, of course, we are always here to help work with you with the software and figuring out how it works. If learning new software and learning technical software, and I will tell you that there's a pretty decent learning curve with Articulate 360. I've been working with it now for about a year and a half, and I still learn something new every time I get in there and build something new. So there's a lot that it can do. And there's a lot of stuff in it that if you don't know it, then there's no reason why you would, and you got to go find out the answer to your question. If that doesn't interest you, then we have services here in the ELC to help you with this. We have 3 full-time instructional designers, 3 full-time instructional technologists, and 3 part-time instructional designers. That may seem like a lot, and we love our department and love the group that we have here. However, we are available for over 1,000 faculty. And a significant part of our time is dedicated to troubleshooting and technical help on Canvas by itself. As you all know, you come to us if you need to export your gradebook, if you need to copy your course into the next semester, anything like that. So more than 50% of our time is spent on helping faculty with the basics of Canvas. So the point of all that is our availability is definitely limited. If you want to do something like this, please contact us and let us know, but we'll need to plan ahead. So if you want to get something in for the fall semester, we're probably past the date where we can accommodate that. If you want to get something in for the spring semester, we need to start talking about that now. Or if it's cool for you to wait until you get it into the fall 2020 semester, then let's start talking about it now. And that way we can just assure that we get the best product available, built, and the one that works for you. Now, this way of doing it, this sort of branching narrative, choose your own adventure type of thing, is only one way to gamify. We also, with this same Articulate 360, we can do things like, if you have a PowerPoint presentation, then we can put that into Articulate, and at various points along this, what would normally be maybe a 45-minute presentation without interruption, we actually put interruption points and we put inline quizzing so that the student gets 10 minutes worth of information and then has a set of questions. If they don't get a certain percentage, you can require that they go back and revisit all of that information over again, or the specific information for what they got wrong. So there's a lot of different ways to use this. That's if you added things like points or rewards and badges, then even that can become a quote-unquote gamified type of gameplay. Any questions on all of that? I know I threw a lot out there.
I think what could also be a good step is getting faculty started off on, something really simple, maybe like a memorization flashcard game. That's in smaller steps.
And as a matter of fact, Andrew is about to come up and talk about you don't have to do the 24-hour for 3 minutes of gameplay approach. There's other ways that you can start a little bit smaller. And Andrew is going to talk about that. I'm going to hand it over to Andrew.
Well, thanks for that awesome segue, guys, talking about how there's more than just one way to gamify, that we don't necessarily have to go with these high-cost models. I would definitely classify creating an Articulate 360 storyline game as a high-cost form of gamification. And so what I want to do with my time is, Brad, if I could get you to unshare, what I'll do is I will share my presentation with you. And I don't believe I'm sharing the right screen. Okay, is everybody seeing me? Is everybody seeing Gamification IRL?
Yes.
Okay, great. So it's entitled Gamification IRL because that's a sort of nerd speak for in real life, how do we gamify our courses, and specifically our Canvas courses in real life using some more low-cost methods. Some of these methods which you can implement yourself without help, some of which I would advocate that you meet with someone like myself. I'm the instructional technologist at the Frisco campus, H207, so come by and say hi if you want to, or Summer Helm or Roy Brookshire over at the McKinney and Plano campuses respectively. So I want to talk about kind of what our role is, the technologist's role is in the gamification process. And I'd also like to point out that this is our role, not just in gamifying, helping you gamify your course with these low-cost methods, but also our role in our process for working with faculty to create media, videos, games, as we've said before, anything really. So yeah, I want you to email us, to walk in, start talking to us out in the hallway, start kicking around ideas, and then fully form an idea into a request form and a submission, which is linked to in our presentation. And what we're going to do is we are going to share our prezis so that all of the links that are in our prezis and in this prezi are going to be available to you to explore further. So you simply click on that link there to fill out an instructional technology request, and then we speak. We have a little powwow and analyze what are you trying to get done and what's the best way to do it. Are we going to produce a game? Are we going to produce a video? Are we going to host some video? It doesn't really matter. We're going to find out what's the best way to achieve those aims. Then we're going to review, you're going to decide if it's appropriate, and then a big part of what I do is I help faculty introduce and implement these elements into their Canvas courses, which is a bigger part of the process than some might first consider, but it can be quite time consuming. So it's always important to keep that in mind. So next up, we're going to talk about one of my favorite and probably one of the most talked about ways to gamify your course, gamify your Canvas course, and that's with badges. So just a quick question for anybody who wants to put in the chat box, or anybody who wants to just shout out there. In what instances have you seen badges being used? It could be in private industry, it could be in Canvas, it could be wherever.
Scouts.
Well, then it might be a good idea.
You
So
said,
what
Mindy said Girl Scouts, is that what you said?
Girl Scouts. No, Girl Scouts is an excellent example of using kind of a trinket, a little reward to incentivize performance and learning.
Yeah, I think Udemy has a good example for like a badge system, because you could do achievements, and course creators I think they can also have like certifiable badges as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's a number of integrations that are offered for Canvas that are not available to us at the moment, but it's becoming a very hot topic in distance learning. Duolingo was introduced as a topic before. Duolingo is another great example of a system really that uses badges to make you feel good about what you're doing. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, no matter the age, people enjoy rewards. People enjoy seeing that little badge of accomplishment, and it can really help you engage your students in your course. And I'm going to see how well I did this here. And you guys let me know if you can hear the audio on this video.
Not hearing anything, unfortunately.
No audio.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to reshare that real quick.
Class activities or are not engaged in the teaching and learning process, you need to find ways of encouraging motivation. This can be supported in a number of different ways, but one of the most successful ways is by providing feedback to acknowledge students' accomplishments. An engaging and attractive way of doing this is by using digital badges. Using digital badges with your students allows you to help gamify the learning process by giving students an interesting way to display their achievements. Digital badges can be given to students as a representation of achievement for a given activity. The advantage of digital badges lies in their flexibility. It is possible to create badges to suit the teaching approach which you have chosen, so badges can be given for non-formal learning or activities. These badges are then incentives to participate, to collaborate, to compete, even as a form of alternative accreditation, as students can display their badges to others to show off their achievements.
I really enjoy the informal, kind of a personal system of accreditation. I think that's a great descriptor for what badges can be for you as an instructor. And as we share this presentation with you guys after we're finished here, I'd really encourage you to take a look at Accreditable, openbadges.me, Creditly, and explore for yourself. Create some badges for yourself. You know, you could have a badge, the contributor badge, somebody who 4 or 5 times a week contributes to discussions, so on and so forth. And I also can encourage you guys to reach out to me or anyone of the instructional technologists or anyone at the ELC. Say, hey, I'm looking to implement badges into my course. Can you please help me? And I think we'd be more than happy to do that. So moving on from badges, we have open source gaming. So the web is kind of a treasure trove of games. You might remember, in your K through 12 career that math games, English games, matching, flash games are still out there. And there's true catered for browser-based learning games that can be found on these online gaming hubs that are all just pre-packaged for you. And it just doesn't have to be through K through 12. I want to point specifically to higher ed learning games and FunBrain. These include games that are great for building life skills such as mindfulness, dealing with stress, things like that. It doesn't just have to be for kids, is really what I want to say. And also, I want to point out that you don't have to think of your game or games as being high polished quality productions, hundreds of people and thousands of dollars, because there are things out there that you likely already use, like Kahoot, like Quizlet, that yes, they count as games, and you yourself, without really much help from the ELC, can start implementing these things today or tomorrow. And I just kind of want to point out here, using my sandbox, an example of how you can use Quizlet to insert ready-made games into your course. So if say I'm a German teacher and I want to start introducing basic vocabulary with a game, all I have to do is create a new page in my Canvas course. We'll call this beginning vocab. Create a page. And something I really hope everyone takes away from this today is I'd like to point out this really neat tool underneath it's in the rich content editor of Canvas, more external tools. Click on here and you'll see a plethora of tools that you can use to insert content into your Canvas course, and we want to insert a game, beginning German. Vocab. Well, this is your beginning German verbs. All I have to do is click on here, embed it, and then there you go. I've got flashcards. There's also matching games. There's a variety of things that Quizlet already does. That's gamification. That's a gamification element that you can add to your class right now. So in addition to open source games, something that you can add to your course right now, there's terms that we don't typically think of when we think gamification. We already do these things a lot without thinking that it is gamification. Competition. Now, competition, it's kind of the classic form of gamification. Get people amped up to do well by competing against each other. Now, I want to introduce to you this tool, Pointogram. Something I really want to point out here that you can do with Pointogram is that you can create a sort of leaderboard which you can link then to your class. You'd have to individually insert or input the students in your class here into Pointogram. And then as your class goes along, you assign certain point totals to activities, and you, in an arcade style, create a leaderboard. Students are motivated. Johan is motivated to jump Daniel. Daniel is motivated to jump Jen, and so on and so forth. And that's something that you can go to Pointogram right now and create a leaderboard. Great way to increase the competition, the gamification of your course without a ton of cost. And of course, please consult me, one of the technologists, if this is something that you would like to do. And then lastly, going along with competition is collaboration. They're kind of two sides of the same coin now. Usually we think of collaboration as the anti-competition, when really whenever you have a game, when you have to reach a end-win state, you often have to work with other people. And so I really want to point out that you already have a ton of tools to increase the collaboration in your course already available to you, using Google tools, using the collaboration tool here in Canvas. You simply have to click on the collaborations tool here on your navigation, start new collaborations using Google Docs, using any Google app or Office 365, and start collaborating, have your students start collaborating right away. And this is stuff that is low cost. It's not going to take hundreds of man hours, and you can start adding it as a gaming element into your class right now. So thanks everybody for your time and for listening to what I've got to say. Are there any questions before I finish?
I don't really have a question, but two possible very good resources. And I think Nicola has actually mentioned it before. Interns, we have we have game programs here at Collin. Interns for like the gamification, and then also we can possibly start to play with sound in games. And there's actually an article, and I'll link it in the chat, and it's about game music and productivity, and how that music or sound or whatever you're using can contribute to help students taking these courses absorb the information and retain it.
Awesome. Thanks, Nicola. And thank you, Casey. Anybody else?
Yeah, is there a problem with FERPA when you have leaderboards?
So it wouldn't be a grade. It would be a score that you wouldn't. That's a great question, because if you assign a point value to, say, if you get an A, if you get a B, if you only assign point values to those sorts of things, then I can see how you say, oh, well, that's a little bit of an issue with FERPA there, because we can see roughly what people's grades are, which is why I would recommend you come to us, talk to us about, okay, what kind of point values are we going to assign into what course activities? You could assign points to simply time spent in the course, engaging with the course, discussion posts, how many times you have replied to peers, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and that's an area where the badges can come into play. So instead of a leaderboard that displays points, it's a leaderboard that displays various badges. And so
Exactly.
All right, 11:56. Man, we are good. Thank you, Andrew. That was fabulous. There are a ton of tools out there that are available that are in sort of complete opposition to what I showed you, which it requires a lot more time dedication, both on the faculty's part and on the builder's part if there are two different people. But jump in there and do what you think will be best for your students. Either way, if you decide to do something a little bit smaller to start with, or if you have got something in your mind that you know that will work beautifully in this sort of choose your own adventure type of format, please come talk to us about it. Shoot us an email, give a call and set up an appointment. If you're not aware, we have offices on every campus, and we have an instructional designer and an instructional technologist on every campus. We are here to help you and are ready and willing to do that. Does anybody have any final questions? Just so you know, we will be sending you an email with a SurveyMonkey link so you can let us know what you thought about our presentation and whether or not you found it helpful. And we always pay very, very close attention to all feedback that we get via those surveys. So please participate, and it'll help us shape what we do in the future.
So when will this be up and available on the website?
The recording
Uh-huh.
of the webinar,
Yes.
it won't take us but 24 hours.
Awesome, because I'd love
Well,
to play.
except, Brad, that we are
Whoops.
closed tomorrow, so.
Oh, yeah. We are closed tomorrow. So it will be probably end of day next Monday before we're able to get it up there.
Great, thanks.
Sure, you betcha. Anything else? Awesome. Thank you all for joining us. We really, really appreciate it. Have a great 3-day weekend, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you so much for the webinar. It was
Thank
great.
you.
Bye.
Bye.